Yo, and what is up, gang? Thank you for checking out Sledgehammer TV today. Spider-Man Far From Home opened up in theaters this holiday week, and it was a beautifully filmed, fast-paced, colorful, action-packed Spider-Man adventure that kind of failed on certain points. It was visually an accomplishment. It has one of, if not the greatest, hero versus villain fights you will ever see put to film, but very, very lacking in the story that they told, in this reviewer's opinion, and we are here to talk about it right here and right now. My name is Nick Nightmare, and you are watching the Hammer and Hollywood review of Spider-Man Far From Home. Let's do it. As far as superhero movies go, the action in this movie is going to be very hard to top. I thought the visual representation of the character of Mysterio was absolutely fantastic. I loved the visual effects in this film. They didn't look too much like obvious visual effects. The team did a fantastic job in bringing to life a very difficult villain to make look intimidating. There's a lot of good to walk away with in this film. If you were looking for Spider-Man action, you definitely got your fill of it. But it is not without its mistakes, and that is what we do best here at Sledgehammer TV. If this is your first time viewing anything on this channel, you know our purpose is to bring the hammer down and maybe fill you guys in on some of the things that you might have missed that may not be the best for this film. And we are going to start right off with Mysterio. As great as his on-screen character was, I am very, very unclear about his motivations. Because what they gave you as reason for this villain to be doing what he's doing in this film takes away from the character 100%, in my opinion. Spoiler alert! From this moment on, because it is nearly impossible for me to talk about the plot points in this film without ruining something for you guys. So here we go on. If you go past this point, it's on you, because we are about to get into the nitty-gritty of this film. So here we go. Mysterio's revelation of being the villain in this film. He starts this whole thing off pretending to be saving the day from all of these threats. The Hydra Man and the Sand Monster and the Lava Monster, all these things that he is positioning himself to be the superhero, the heir apparent to Iron Man. And Iron Man is really what this movie was all about. Instead of calling this movie Spider-Man Far From Home, you could have called it Iron Man 4, Life Without Tony. Or you could have called it Avengers Epilogue. Because at the end of the day, changing the motivation of Mysterio from being a special effects artist and former Hollywood stuntman who was obsessed with Spider-Man, and taking his core belief of that and changing it into being obsessed with Iron Man, change the flavor of this villain for this whole film. Mysterio is no longer driven by his desire and need to best Spider-Man. He wants revenge on Tony Stark for taking a piece of equipment that he developed for him in Stark Industries and calling it BARF. We all know the BARF technology from back in Civil War. This was apparently created by Beck, and Beck is pissed off all these years later. Tony Stark is dead, and now apparently he wants to exact his revenge. There is no reason for him to be doing any of the things he's doing because Tony Stark is dead. He's effectively just trying to destroy the legacy of Tony Stark. And that's what this whole movie was about. Who's going to be the next Iron Man? Why are we talking about this in a Spider-Man movie? Oh, it's the first movie following the snap. It's the first movie after, so we have to tie up all these loose ends. No, this is a Spider-Man movie. We should be focused intently on Spider-Man, not watching Spider-Man try to figure out what to do in a world without Iron Man. And then they give you these ridiculous glasses, the even dead I'm the hero glasses. And that one phrase effectively sums up this whole movie. We're watching a Spider-Man adventure that is heavily overshadowed by the character of Iron Man. They talked about it so much. The presence of Happy Hogan. Everything about this movie. Well, what are we going to do in a world without Iron Man? Well, Iron Man wanted you to be his successor, but he knew you weren't going to be able to do it, so he's leaving it up to Peter Parker to find the real successor for Iron Man. Peter Parker falls for the ruse of Mysterio. He falls for all his illusions and deceptions, and he gives Mysterio the powers of Iron Man. And once he gives him these powers, he reveals the biggest mistake with the Mysterio character. He reveals a cast of clowns, all former Stark employees, continuing with that heavy Iron Man overtone. Everybody that's in this helping Mysterio do whatever it is they're trying to do are all there because they hate Tony Stark and Iron Man, who's already dead. So why are they doing this? And that is not Mysterio. Mysterio was a one-man show. He was that brilliant. He was a mastermind, a master of manipulation and illusion. He didn't have a Hollywood team of directors and screenwriters and costume people steaming his cape. It's an interesting take on the character. But that's not who the character was. And that's not what I expected to see. I expected to see Mysterio, obsessed with Spider-Man, replicating the powers of Spider-Man, which is what he was known to do, and causing mischief in the life of Spider-Man. Not because he's mad at Tony Stark, but because he has a sick and twisted obsession with the web slinger. But that's not what we got here. Tucked inside all of this madness is some of the greatest superhero action you will ever see put to screen. The hero-villain fight between Spider-Man and Mysterio. The main fight in the middle of this film is an absolute spectacular feat. It was just beautiful. The way that they had you disoriented the whole time with Spider-Man. All of the ways that Mysterio was changing the environments around him, changing his size, becoming giant at one moment, making Spider-Man look small in the next, and it just all was a masterful portrayal of the powers of this villain and showing you and really showcasing why Mysterio is one of the best villains Spider-Man has ever faced. One of his oldest villains, even older than the Green Goblin. And they did him justice in the visual representation of his character. The backstory and his reasoning and the end game for him in this movie was ridiculous, and it really took away from it for me. The character of Peter Parker was regressed a little bit back to the sniveling teenager that we all seen him in the first one. I thought there would be some sort of a carryover from all of the things that this young man has just experienced with Tony Stark and the Avengers and everything that happened in the Infinity War, that he would be coming at this with a lot more of a mature stance at this point. But Peter Parker obviously learned nothing from Tony Stark. If you want to talk about Tony Stark in this movie, why not talk about the fact that the one lasting lesson Tony Stark tried to impart on everybody was that sacrifice is what is sometimes necessary to truly be the hero, which is why he sacrificed his own life at the end of everything in the Avengers. But Spider-Man comes back. Spider-Man's being Spider-Man. He apparently learned nothing because all he gives a shit about is giving a necklace to Mary Jane at the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. Learning nothing from everything that he has been experiencing with Tony Stark. He's okay with being sad about it. He's trying to process the loss of Mr. Stark and all this crap, but he's not learning any lessons, apparently. I thought a lot of the storylines in this thing were very forced. There was a lot of good comic relief. Ned is a great character. He served his purpose, giving you a laugh here and there. I'm not a big fan of the new representation of Mary Jane Watson, and I'm not saying that in direction of the actress. I love Zendaya as a choice for Mary Jane Watson. It doesn't bother me that she was cast in the role. What bothers me is the way that they write the character. The script that they give this girl. I don't like this really jaded, angsty, edgy Mary Jane. This really fucking weird, I hate the world. I'm kind of, goth, but not MJ. Like, I don't even understand what Peter sees in this girl. She's weird and doesn't really come across as somebody you would want to be with. Somebody that you don't really root for if you don't know that she's Mary Jane. If she was not MJ and she was somebody else there, you wouldn't want Peter Parker to be with this weirdo. It's just a very weird dynamic between the two. And I'm not a big fan of the way they write this character. Zendaya, however, did a great job. She does play the part very well. Very believable in her portrayal of this role. I just don't like that character's direction. Just like I'm not very happy with the way they use Spider-Man as of late. It seems in every franchise they just get this itch, and I don't know whether it's a monetary thing that they want to save cash and they don't want to animate the full body anymore, but having Spider-Man do so much without the mask on. It's one thing to have to spring into action as a kid on the bus, in the middle of nowhere. You don't have your suit, your friends are in trouble, you do your best to not be seen, you spring into action. Which I thought was kind of ridiculous too. How is nobody seeing this? He's surrounded by classmates and people all over, but he's swinging around fighting in his normal clothes. And nobody notices this. That's a whole nother set of wax. Mainly, I don't understand why he's in his full suit and he's in the middle of battling and he whips his mask off. This is a character who has historically wanted to keep his secret identity close to the chest. He's wanted to not be revealed to protect the people in his life, to keep everybody in his personal life safe. He's one of the only Marvel characters that really follows that. But here he's just fighting with his mask off. It's not like it got torn or ripped. He just took it off. Now he's fighting his full suit, mask off, but still worried about, who's going to see me? It's off-putting to me. Spider-Man shouldn't be taking his mask off in the middle of battle for nothing. I wasn't a big fan of the whole Night Monkey suit thing. I thought that was kind of lame. I didn't enjoy any of that. That suit didn't really give him anything special. Why he would take his normal suit and not the Iron Spider suit, I don't know. There was the scene in the credits. That was a very cool scene of Spider-Man beating down some thugs in a restaurant and then telling the cops, hey, I just got to do your job, whatever, being Spider-Man with that little one-liner. That was not in this movie. There was nothing. There was a lot of scenes in the trailer that didn't make it into this movie, that made you come into this thinking you were going to get a different feel to this movie, but it just wasn't as lighthearted as you might think. It had a few jokes and one-liners, but it really is just very depressing. It is centered around, what are we going to do without Iron Man? They ruined the Mysterio character for me just based off of his motivations for doing what he did. And I think the worst thing about it is there really is no reason. What was the goal for Mysterio? Usually a villain does something, he wants to destroy the world for reason A or reason B, or perhaps he's doing all of these crazy illusions in order to rob a bank somewhere else as a misdirection. And this movie was great at misdirection and keeping you on your toes and not knowing what was reality and what wasn't. But I don't know what the hell the point was. He went through all this trouble to make everybody see him as a hero, to make Peter Parker trust him enough to give him the Edith glasses, the power of Iron Man. He gets the powers of Iron Man, and then calls forth this assault on the city of London or Prague or wherever they are. For what? What was he going to get out of this? Personal satisfaction? He's just staining the legacy of Tony Stark because all of these things are property of Stark Industries? The man is dead. What does any of this matter? Oh, everybody views him as a god? Iron Man is all of a sudden a god amongst heroes? You got portraits of shit of him all over the place. Nobody gives a shit about Captain America? Nobody gives a shit about anybody else that died? You only give a shit about Iron Man? He's a fucking deity now? And now Mysterio gets all his powers, all of the gifts of the Iron Man, and all he wants to do is make Iron Man look bad. That's his goal? He wasn't trying to steal some cash. He wasn't trying to get some sort of a secret, military laser so that he could blow up Stark Tower. Like, there is no outside motivation for this other than I'm angry and I want to make this guy look bad even though he's dead. And that is a stupid motivation. It really is. I also was not appreciative of, like I said, the whole Happy Hogan involvement. It was just an easy out for Spider-Man to get new costumes. It's almost like Spider-Man would be nothing without Iron Man and Tony Stark. He picks him up in this jet that just so happens to have a whole system of Spider-Man suits in it. All of these designs that were, I guess, made up by Tony Stark, not by Peter Parker, the guy who is Spider-Man, who's supposed to be a student genius. You know what I mean? He's relying on all of this other shit from Tony Stark. Everything about Spider-Man is only special because of Iron Man. Why is that a thing? Why are we doing that? Is his presence in the Marvel Universe that important that now that he's gone, we still need him to be a part of the movies in the MCU? I don't get it. It was one thing to cast Jake Gyllenhaal and make him look directly like Tony Stark so that you could see Peter feeling for him and being sucked in by this guy that has the same charm and charisma as Tony, forcing him to give him these glasses. And you see how much we're talking about Iron Man in a Spider-Man movie review? And I'm telling you, I promise you, I'm not even near touched the topic as much as they did in this movie as a whole. That was the one of two big things about this movie that just dragged it down. Way too much talk about a hero that's gone, that really doesn't matter, and a real disservice to the main villain by changing all of his motivations from being the anti-hero to Spider-Man to just being a jealous bitch angry at Iron Man. So I didn't appreciate that. On the positive side of things, the action. Like I said at the open of this thing, the action is spectacular. The fights with the elementals, who aren't actually the comic book elementals and had nothing more to them but being a Mysterio illusion, were great. I didn't appreciate that they didn't really come to anything. You go into this thing watching this, and I kind of had a feeling that maybe everybody was feeling it was going to be Hydra Man and Multi-Man and possibly the Sandman in all of these elemental forms. Some sort of new characters or villains for Spider-Man to overcome in which Mysterio makes his name known as a hero. Something like that. And I thought that it would be revealed as a team-up between these villains, that Mysterio was actually working with Hydra Man and Multi-Man and Sandman, and they were all in this whole big plan to take down the Spider-Man, since this is a Spider-Man movie. But none of that happened. We had all of these big-time events caused by Mysterio, all as an illusion. And the amount of devastation and destruction that were actually caused by these illusions is a little bit unreasonable, if you ask me. The guy's leveling cities with magic, but not actual magic, with special effects magic. With drones who are sending out sonar pulses to create the devastation. And nobody was able to notice any of this until Spider-Man was able to jig loose one of the projectors, and Mary Jane happens to pick it up. A lot of real coincidental, what do you call them? Like, they were giving Mickeys throughout this whole entire movie. Oh, well, here you go. How are we going to figure this one out? Well, let's just make Mary Jane figure it out. There was a lot of inconsistencies in the story as well. I didn't enjoy what they were trying to say. The whole involvement of Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., only by the end of this thing to be revealed to not even be Nick Fury. And it was actually a Skrull from the Captain Marvel movies, which is never a good thing if you ask me. If you're bringing in something from Captain Marvel, I'm immediately disinterested because I hated that movie so much. This movie I didn't hate, and I appreciated it as a superhero movie, but like I said, the story behind it, the changing of the motivations, the emphasis on the missing Tony Stark and who is going to take the Iron Man mantle, that is not what this movie should have been about. This should just have been another story about Spider-Man. Only Spider-Man, not anybody else. I thought we all wanted to move on. Everywhere you hear, everybody's talking about, we got to move on from the events of the snap, which they all talk about now, and it's called the blip. And they did a great job of kind of explaining that, and they showed a very intriguing little, like a student news program, where they tried to explain to you guys what was going on and how people disappeared and then reappeared and were 5 years older. They did a couple of interesting things, but they were just doing way too much of the wrong thing. Too much emphasis on everything else, and I couldn't really get behind it after they ruined Mysterio for me. Mysterio is a one-man show, not a network of Tony Stark goons who are all still pissed off at him even after death. That's what this movie is about, and that's why this movie suffers. But you want top-notch action, you want to be entertained by watching the web-slinger do his thing, this is another one of those movies that you can go in and you can have a whole lot of fun if you're not an asshole like me and look too deep into the story. If you're going to just go in open-minded, not knowing anything about the character of Mysterio, not really knowing, or somebody who's really interested in knowing what happens after to everybody else in the universe, then, maybe this is the movie for you. But instead of this being the end of Phase 3, I think Endgame should have been the end of Phase 3. And they should have left this to be a movie all on its own, or really use it as a kickstart to go towards the next phase. Because instead of trying to wrap everything up, you should have started to begin new things. Yeah, and the end of this movie, let's talk about that. We see Spider-Man obviously becomes smarter than Mysterio. He goes into the illusion. He battles Mysterio in a motion capture suit, which just was baffling to me. Even within his illusions, Mysterio was always in the fishbowl green costume. Why he had to be fighting as Jake Gyllenhaal in a pair of pajamas with dots all over it, that's a character design flaw, if you ask me. But Spider-Man obviously bests the villain to the best of his knowledge, but Mysterio is a master of deceit and illusion. Is Beck dead? I don't believe so. He could very well be dead, and somebody else may take up the mantle of Mysterio. We saw one of Tony Stark's little idiots uploading the whatever data they have to continue on and go further with the Mysterio character in other iterations of this film. But seeing how they used him here, they're probably going to use him similarly in future iterations, so I am not going to really be too happy about that in the future as well. But looking at the post-credit scenes now, the revelation of the Krulls actually being Nick Fury through this whole movie, only to go to see Nick Fury in space on this giant spaceship, doing only what I could assume is be forming the organization of S.W.O.R.D., since S.H.I.E.L.D. has gone to shit right now, which is something he has done in the comics as well. We're probably going to explore that in the next phase. I also thought it was great to see J. Jonah Jameson casted as J.K. Simmons once again, reprising the role from future iterations in other universes of the Spider-Man movieverse. And there's nobody that does J. Jonah Jameson better than J.K. Simmons. So I kind of popped for that. I thought that was really great. And I thought it was interesting that they would end this movie with the premise that I thought this whole movie was going to start with. Because Mysterio, at some point, reveals to J. Jonah Jameson, even in the comics, that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And then they are going to announce it to the entire world. And this happened at the I think this was the mid-credit scene. And Spider-Man's identity was revealed to the public, and he is being made to look as the villain, which was one of Mysterio's ultimate deceptions against Spider-Man. It made it very hard for him to come back from. Mysterio in the comics was impersonating Spider-Man, as I mentioned at the beginning. He learned how to replicate all of the powers that Spider-Man possessed. He used those powers to rob banks and do evil things, and Spider-Man got caught on camera. There's evidence, there's pictures, and he was painted as a vigilante and a villain, and he was forced to overcome that and try to defeat Mysterio, and it was a great story arc, and I thought that's what we were going into when we sat down for Far From Home today. But that's not where we went. It is seemingly where we're going with that mid-credit scene, as the next Spider-Man movie is going to end up starting with him most likely being on the run, or at the very least wanted by the police, probably finding a way to wrap up this whole entire Spider-Man story arc by the third Tom Holland-led Spider-Man movie. All in all, a very fun movie to watch. Lots of great action, including the greatest fight ever. Spider-Man vs. Mysterio in this movie is a cinematic masterpiece. Absolutely beautiful. Other than that, as you heard for the most part, the storyline for diehard fans and people that really enjoy the character of Mysterio is probably going to miss the mark. For many of you guys that are just enjoying the MCU for what it is, you're going to love the shit out of this movie if you're not a cynical asshole like me. But that's my job. We are here to bring the hammer down. We're not here to sugarcoat things and make things better than they are. We're here to tell you it like it is, and we bring the facts and we bring the hammer like nobody else. Thank you guys for checking out our Spider-Man Far From Home review and reaction show today. I can't really say too much more about it. I got all my points out there in a nutshell. If you have seen it and you have questions about anything specifically pertaining to this movie that I might not have addressed, feel free to ask in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed today's show in any way, shape, or form, make sure you smash that like button so I'm sure to find out about it. And then share this video with each and every one of your movie-going buddies all over the movie-going world, especially if they went to see Spider-Man Far From Home and maybe didn't catch some of the things that I have enlightened you guys on today. We don't only bring the hammer down on Hollywood, we are also a pro wrestling review channel, and all of you wrestling fans that might be here for the first time, don't forget to be with us this Monday night and every Monday night and Tuesday night as well, as we bring the hammer down on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live like nobody else. But don't fret, I'm not no mark for anything. Everything is equally smashed on this channel as we bring the hammer down on All Elite Wrestling as well. Lots of other Hammer in Hollywoods coming your way, as well as the ones we already have. If you missed our Dark Phoenix review and reaction show, it's one that should not be missed. Go back and check it out right now. We brought the hammer down on the Avengers. The final season of Game of Thrones, which was a disaster, is reviewed and reacted to live on this channel as well. Lots of stuff for you guys to watch and enjoy. Our Pro Wrestling Crate unboxing for the month of June is up and live on the channel, as well as all of the wrestling news and rumors that you could handle all right here on your new favorite YouTube channel, Sledgehammer TV, home of the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show and Hammering Hollywood. That, my friends, is going to do it. My name is Nick Nightmare. This is the team, Thor the Sledgehammer, the official Sledgehammer of the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show and Sledgehammer TV. His tag team partner, the World Heavyweight Champion of all the microphones in all the world, Mr. Blue the Snowball. The most important member of the team, as always, is each and every one of you. We are so close to 2K, and we will get there even closer with you, because right now, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you hit that subscribe button and be one of almost 2,000 subscribers all over the world that know that when you want your wrestling news and entertainment news bullshit free and full of truth and justice, that the hammer has it for you, and Sledgehammer TV is the place to be. That, my friends, is going to do it, and we are out of here, and we will see you next time right here on your new favorite YouTube channel, Sledgehammer TV, home of Hammer in Hollywood and the Sledgehammer Wrestling Show. Oops. Have a good one.